Welcome to CMMS Radio, a podcast, blog site, and general resource for all things CMMS, computerized maintenance management software, from selection to implementation to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey. We'll bring in experts along the way to help us learn more about CMMS, facilities operations, and much more. If you need help with the CMMS project, send a message at CMMSradio.com using the What's on Your Mind link. Suggest a topic, share your CMMS story, or ask questions. Thanks for tuning in. Today we're joined by Raj Submaranian, and he is the co-founder and head of strategy at Facilio. Facilio is an AI-driven property operations platform providing operations and maintenance teams real-time visibility into their operations. Thanks for joining us today, Raj.
Thanks for having me, Greg.
It's an absolute pleasure. And what I wanted to do today is just start out with a pretty standard question, but what is your background and how did that lead you to Facilio?
I'm a mechanical engineer. That's what I studied. But when I was finishing my undergrad, that was a time when the software services market was harding up. Like there was so much of opportunities in that. Pretty much everybody who did engineering, irrespective of what major they did it in, all went to software jobs. Like after, like there was so much of need and market for software developers. So I didn't know any programming, but I got hired into a software development job, and I learned on the job to code and program, and that's how I got into softwares, right? But I spent 17 years with the company that I joined straight from college. And the company is now called Zoho. It was used to be called Advinet when I joined them. But a lot of people know Zoho. It's one of the very first movers of cloud SaaS business applications in the business application space. They're very known for their business applications, including CRM support, books, invoicing, and all of that. But back in those days, they were a bootstrap story, and they were initially very successful in telecom products, and that's where I started my career with in telecom network management space. Right, I started out as a developer and then moved into did that for 2-3 years, and then moved into pre-sales, sales engineering, and then I actually uh, you know dipped my hand into multiple functions, right? Marketing, partner engagement. I was in Europe for a few years doing partner engagement and training, and all of that, and then finally came into products. Got into IoT, the telecom product that they used to have when telecom saw a slump towards the end of 2027 2007 2008. We took that same platform and made it into an IoT application enablement platform. And a lot of it was a developer product, right? So a lot of partners would develop applications on top of the platform, and one of the application areas happened to be buildings, right? So that's how I got into buildings and controls and the IoT scope of IoT within buildings. And because I was spending a lot of time in Zoho suite of applications, which is enterprise IT management, customer support, ticketing. There was even a facility management product at a point in time. So we were very familiar with doing all this ticketing, help desk, service management software on the Zoho side of things, and then we got familiarity into IoT and platform capabilities and IoT use cases on the building side. It was clear as a day, like that building operations actually, and the state of software within building operations, we could do a lot better there, and we saw an opportunity there, and decided to start Facilio. That's basically, you start, we covered the founding story there, but
Yeah, that's always part of this. So one of the things that's important when we talk about CMMS radio, and obviously that comes from me, but I get this constant kind of feedback, inquiry, different topical discussions with all kinds of people in the industry. And then there's my past in the industry, where I really think the journey stories, kind of the origin stories, are not only important, but it gives some insight into you, your organization, who you are, how you operate. And I think that's very important to people. And it can get lost in the shuffle when companies are going to market and they're starting to scale, because you get busy. Even small companies, you get busy. You can't attend to the things that you really want to. So this
Mhm.
gives an opportunity for people to learn those things that you might want to actually have out there for them to just learn and have some ideas. It's not necessarily about the product, it's about the process. So the journey story and the process or processes are what I'm most interested in. And so that leads me to my next question. And I'd like to understand, like, what was the problem that you and your team and your co-founders identified
Mhm.
that you intended to solve? What was the problem that you solved, or what do you solve?
Yeah, so when we got like myself and other co-founders, right? We are like four of us together. We all joined the same company at the same time. Three of us, spent 17 years in the same company, and then started Facilio. And one of the other co-founders left the previous company and did multiple stints, and then joined hands with us when we started Facilio, right? So, but we were pretty much friends for 17 years, first of all. And when I talked about IoT, like when we got into IoT back in 2009, 2009, 2010 timeframe, it was called mission to mission back in those days. Buildings happened to be one of the domains where customers were interested in developing applications, right? And because we were looking at different application use cases around IoT, from smart farming to irrigation to street lights, to ATM site monitoring, cell tower monitoring. There was so much a variety of applications for IoT, and buildings was the most. We were curious about buildings, and that seemed like biggest opportunity area where we could really create a lot of value in, because for a couple of reasons, right? When you look at it from an IoT perspective, for IoT, the in other areas it needs a lot of capital investment, right? In the form of, you have to go and deploy sensors. If you have to monitor streetlights, you have to make sure you have the infrastructure to collect data and get that data, and that means installing sensors, installing gateway equipment, and before you even consider software, right? In buildings, that's all there, like especially in larger buildings, thanks to the control systems and the BMS infrastructure, it is there. And the hardware and the infrastructure layer up to the protocol level is pretty much standardized for the most part. So it's conducive for like an IoT application provider to actually just focus on their strengths with this software and cloud capabilities, and tap into the infrastructure for data and communication, and focus on what they can deliver best, which is the application use cases around around IoT value addition, right? So, and that seemed that made sense. And buildings are a huge global market. Buildings everywhere, it's basically the same. There are a lot of segments. It's a massive market. And pretty much the infrastructure is, there is no difference in infrastructure. It's not like I'm actually talking backnet in the US and a totally different protocol in Europe, and there is no regional nuances, so to speak. Right. So it made sense to focus on buildings. And also, when we looked at the operation side of things, right? So one software like CMMS is a big um, big component there, where that's one software that gets used on a portfolio scale. Large portfolios use multiple CMMS solutions, but at least they use it across buildings. And
Yes.
so and that was a lot of the CMMS We look when back in 2017 when we looked at the CMMS landscape, it was all like none of the technology uh, technology changes that happened in enterprise software and other domains did not actually come into building operations or CMMS, right? So I'm talking cloud. Cloud. A lot of CMMS has moved to cloud, but even now you can see a lot of CMMS solutions are not like true cloud native solutions. They just are installed in the cloud server. That's about it, right? It's not true multi-tenant cloud SaaS a solution like mobile functionalities, cloud. Nowadays we have low code, no code capabilities and workflow management. All of that was already commonplace in, say, enterprise IT or even banking and other domains, but it not actually was not adopted well enough in this space. So the landscape of the CMMS software, and we had a lot of exposure to building cloud SaaS, mobile first API first cloud first application SaaS applications in Zoho, and then we had the IoT exposure, and both of that seemed to play very well for a market like building operations, where we could add a lot of value in kind of uh, being someone who can look at delivering these seemingly siloed set of systems in building operations, bring them all, unify all of that into a single solution and provide value for customers in that space, right? So that's how we looked at it actually.
So a lot of this really, seems to, and this is a current kind of trend right now. It's a new, uh, kind of data play. It's not the same old data play because you can go so much further within organizations and start to capture so much more data that's going to inform your actions and going to hopefully, hope's not really a strategy, but it's a good thing, allow maintenance teams, operations to enhance their behaviors or maybe shape their behaviors more towards those outcomes and get better and better at interpreting data, using it to create actionable items. Now, there is a recent document that was published, and it was by Facilio, and it's called The Evolution of CMMS. And I've reviewed it, at least, gone through it and tried to understand what that's really all about. And it seems to address the primary issue of legacy CMMS systems, which would be these older, outdated, for lack of a better description, antiquated type systems. Now, I'm not saying that because I want to crush those systems, because they end up in environments where there's very heavy investment, and at that point an organization has kind of a responsibility to find ways to further leverage it, even if they run into and identify gaps. So are you surprised these legacy systems out there still exist and orgs are really still trying to make them work? Does it surprise you? Because it surprised me.
um, to an extent, I'm not surprised by the fact that they're still out there. I'm only it was a little expected, but I didn't probably understand the enormity of it, or the prevalence of it in terms of how uh, change resistant or this whole segment is, right? When it
Yeah.
comes to change, they might have like a really old system that doesn't quite like, it's very hard to find a happy CMMS customer, right? But they still but they would still sign a 3-year extension on their deal. Right? So the
Yeah.
change management and all of that is because it's not just the software, right? So they have to train their staff, and it's understandable, but still, I won't say I didn't quite expect it. I expected it, but I'm still surprised by that. As like you.
Yeah. And that's I think you kind of hit on what I've observed out there over the last, we're going to call it 20 years, where sometimes they're hitting the easy button with that renewal, that contract extension. And we have to kind of understand that because they're moving. They're moving. And there's this risk, if we're looking top down, board, C-suite, etc., in a lot of ways from where they sit, that doesn't make sense. There's nothing compelling enough behind why we would make such a change. So my next question is, what would be your number one piece of advice for organizations dealing with these legacy CMMS platforms when it comes to considering or making a jump to a new, more modernized or better fit type CMMS platform? What would be your number one piece of advice?
Um, Yeah, I'll probably go back to the previous question because these two questions are related, right? And while we can be sitting here wondering why won't they change, there was also not enough reasons for them to change, right? So if you looked at the facility management space, it wasn't something that was nothing that now nothing drastic was happening in that, right? So it was all just very small incremental changes, like you would probably replace a vendor for a better contract, 3% here, 5% there. So sort of a thing. There was no drastic changes in the way you operated. The buildings were all like mostly occupied and being operated the same way year in year out. So the way they were set up to function, that they didn't have to really change much to deliver the outcomes that they are expected to deliver, right? But that has really changed in the last few years, right? So mainly because two reasons, and we covered this in the paper. One was COVID, right? Suddenly, uh, facility management had a seat at the table when it comes to strategy. When it comes to they had suddenly had to shut down offices. All their business was dependent on that. And slowly that changed, and they had to bring back people. And it keeps changing depending on the segment you are playing in. Now facility managers and the key facility folks have seat at the table when it comes to business strategy, right? And they have a say in it, and their outcomes, they are expected to deliver on some outcomes that that is forcing them to think. So that nudge is there right now for them to change, right? It wasn't there past decade, maybe, I don't know. That's one change that has happened. And then the other change is around the global push towards net zero and climate change, um, that's looming all over us, right? So across segments, and a lot of organizations have net zero objectives, net zero goals, and a roadmap for that. And again, facility managers are called into action there. They have to do their part to. And buildings, as you know, are have a large one of the largest contributions when it comes to carbon and GHG emissions, right? So they have they have a role to play there. So these two, like, macro drivers are now kind of shaking shaking the ground beneath the facility manager management function and the stakeholders there, right? So that gives them enough impetus to actually look to change, right? So that's the relation I would draw to the previous question, and why there wasn't much change in the past decade. But that's also the reason why the time is now to for them to actually start looking at why they should be changing, what areas they should be focusing on, how they can what kind of technologies they have to um, rely upon to deliver those outcomes, and things like that, right? So, and one of the major areas when it comes to facilities management, CMMS is an obvious area, right? So even if you look at, depending on the segments again, if you look at say controls or building automation, it is still deployed at a building level. You have separate control systems for every building. It is not operating on a portfolio scale. So if you take a portfolio of buildings and somebody who's responsible for a portfolio of buildings, it could be a higher ed campus, it could be a commercial real estate portfolio, it could be a hospital estate or something. But CMMS is something that they're using across buildings and can, quickly derive some value if they actually focused on CMMS, got CMMS in order so that they can drive changes off of CMMS, right? Once they have CMMS that is set up for what they are supposed to deliver on, the outcomes that they are expected to deliver on, now they can go and see what other gaps do I have. So okay, now I have the CMMS is in order, and the CMMS is now modern. It is API first, mobile first. So I've addressed all my inefficiencies on when it comes to my day-to-day workflows on the work order management, maintenance, and all of that. From here onwards, I have to improve, right? So what areas do I have to improve? I have to report on, say for example, I have to report on energy performance of my buildings, energy consumption at an equipment level, energy like occupancy data, so that because I'm supposed to optimize my building in occupancy, I have to install sensors and things like that, and that has to talk to CMMS, right? There's so much complexity and layers to this. CMMS becomes an obvious place that they can probably focus on. If they have a legacy software that is not conducive for all of the challenges that lie ahead for them, then it makes sense to focus on CMMS first for them, right? There are other areas that they can parallelly start doing, but CMMS becomes a key focus area there.
I agree. I agree. So now the question more this is very very specific to Facilio,
Yeah.
and I'm very interested in what you'll have to say about this. Very simple question. But where and how does the AI, artificial intelligence, within Facilio come into play, and why is it important to facilities operations and maintenance teams?
Okay. Um, there is definitely a role for AI to play in CMMS, like in any other function that you probably can imagine, right? So, uh, but my take is like, at least in the shorter term, facility management as a domain, right, has to um, you know make a switch into other technologies that will enable AI to come in later and add value, right? So you cannot go from paper to AI in one jump, right? You can
Yeah.
you can probably go from spreadsheets to AI. That is even a difficult jump, but it is better to go from paper to digitization, and digitization to proper data organization and data infrastructure, and then think about AI after that, right? So
Yeah.
that has to be a journey. And if you look at broadly the space, we're not quite there yet for AI to come in and do a lot of dramatic value addition for whatever we are trying to accomplish, right? So AI cannot just go and turn screws on your equipment right now. The best you can probably do is interpret the service requests, make sense of what is documented, digitized already, make sense of the data, and throw some insights. But you need the fundamentals for that, right? So that change has to happen. And and with a lot of legacy systems, if you have data not captured properly, not organized properly, if it's scattered in different files and databases and things like that, that is not a good place to start with for AI.
Got it. So it seems as if, and this is just my taking a shot at it, the most important part, and this would feed into also your advice or our advice, maybe something that we could treat as advice or something like that. When you make these changes from a legacy system to a more modern CMMS platform, and then we ask, where does AI play a role? AI is going to play a role once your data is starting to be captured and now available in the right way so that it can then be interpreted by AI to help improve the interpretation of said data, which then is going to translate into the new behaviors and actions that the AI is helping you and your actual human elements to make the highest impact. Is that a fair statement?
That's a fair statement, and you have to go through that. I think maybe an evolutionary process, or so to speak, when it comes to digital technologies for AI. That's natural transformation for you, natural progression that you have to go through from a technology standpoint to get there, right?
Absolutely. So it's important for anyone out there looking at these projects that if you're on paper and spreadsheets and all these kind of archaic ways we do, in fact, get things done, you can then move into a digitized environment where you're leveraging a CMMS platform, for example, for your facilities operations, property operations, et cetera. And then that's going to take a period of time. And then at some point that's going to get really good. And then where do we improve from there? Well, now we're going to incorporate more of the functionality so that we can do much better preventive maintenance and move away from reactive type of maintenance and operations. And now we can start to look at how's AI going to help with that. So next question is, what is on the horizon in the next several months for Facilio as it relates to the industry as a whole, or anything that you have coming up with regards to technology or anything like that?
So we're still very early, right? We are a new player in the segment, and we launched this. We call it connected CMMS. So it's a CMMS system, but it's connected in ways like we're connecting. We see it in three different pillars: connecting people, systems, and process. Right, connecting people because traditionally a lot of the CMMS system is built for just one user and built with one user in mind, which is the technician who is completing the work order. But there are other stakeholders that are really important in this entire O&M life cycle, right? So including executive view of things to, if you're servicing your customer, how do you interact with customers? How does customer get feedback about your process? If you're using vendors, how does vendor come into play? It's not good that vendors are trading emails and sending pictures of their work order sheets to you for you to digest and all of that, right? So there are multiple stakeholders, and how do you bring all of that people, connect all of the people and streamline their workflows? That is the process part, right? So connecting process is basically around workflow. So if your day-to-day workflow involves, if you get a service request or a breakdown complaint from a customer, and if you have to send it off to your vendor and they have to come in and do the work, and there is approval involved, payments involved, how do you streamline all of that process, right? Right now most of the work, O&M work, happens outside of CMMS, right? CMMS is there to probably document. It's a system of record, so you finally close the work order, put in some details and document something, but all of the work happens out there. You're calling your vendors, you're probably exchanging emails, you're sending it to your finance team for approval. All of that is not residing within CMMS, right? How do you enable that in CMMS, thereby reducing the time that it takes to go from one step to another? So by automating all of these steps into CMMS, you're not just bringing visibility into how much time it takes for you to take all of these things to close the work order as fast as possible, but cutting down time, but is bringing visibility into where you are actually spending the time you are spending to close the work order, right? So that's the process side of things. And then finally the systems, right? So for you to deliver superior CMMS outcomes, and I'm saying it as CMMS outcomes, it's the larger O&M outcomes that you are expected to deliver, which is basically improving occupant satisfaction, making sure the space is safe and healthy. It's a healthy environment. Making sure your energy performance of your building is improving so that you are on target to achieve your net zero goals. All of those outcomes, and CMMS has a role to play in that. And when you look at your CMMS outcome from that larger business goals perspective, CMMS has to interact with a lot of systems, right? So it's not just enough for you to just do your planned maintenance on a schedule anymore. You have to monitor your system. You have to know if you're if the air changes in your buildings is happening properly, so you're maintaining a healthy environment. You have to make sure energy consumption at a equipment level is it's ideal, or it's not degrading, right? And if it is degrading, you have to act on it. Right, before that, nobody bothered about whether, you probably looked at had an eye on your monthly energy bills, but nothing beyond that. Right now, you have to go granular and take a view of those things and see how your maintenance is affecting energy performance of your assets and things like that. Right, so there is a role for CMMS to interact with multiple systems. Even to improve your process and workflows, you may have to integrate with your payment system to automate that payment, so that you're not wasting 2 hours on every single work order to trading emails and things like that. Right, so
Right.
the integration with all these systems is again a key component of it. So we see the connected CMMS is basically around connecting people, systems, and process, and that's what we have in market today. And we have a lot of we're still in early days. We have about 50 customers now, but there is scope for us to grab market, and we're playing in different segments. And we are selling globally. We are already in Europe, US, Middle East, South Asia, East Asia, and Australia, New Zealand. We have customers across the globe, but the plan is to, or the idea is to kind of expand in each of these regions across segments. And we are in commercial real estate, higher ed, and hospitals, and some FM services companies are our customers as well. So those are the segments that we're focusing on. So that's the short term goal. On the product itself, in terms of the product vision, just continuing to execute on the connected CMMS vision and improving upon in each of these pillars, like better connectivity to systems and the breadth of integration with other systems out there, better workflow capabilities for integrations and automation, better functionality for different stakeholders, mobile apps for different stakeholders, and all of that. So we have a huge roadmap in improving on each of these three individual pillars.
That's important. That's important. I know for me, over the years, that roadmap is not just important to you as an organization, but it's actually extremely important to your clientele because it gives them a sense of where you're going. And then getting back to what you're talking about with the people, the processes, and systems being connected, what's happening there is the silos, they don't get eliminated, they get connected, almost like there's a bridge between them so that they don't have to stay in the silo, or they get that visibility to improve the overall motion of an organization. And that's ultimately what you're trying to enable for people. And I think what's important also is for people to understand, at least in your case with Facilio, is it geared towards pure enterprise, or does SMB and some of the other type organizations with fewer facilities and whatnot,
Mm-hmm.
would this be more of an enterprise play for clients out there that are considering looking around for systems?
Yeah, it's not an SMB product in the sense that you can't just go and sign up and set it up yourself and things like that. So it has an mid-market enterprise. It's set up as that kind of a solution, but we do have smaller customers. Right, we have customers who are paying $10,000 a year for us for few users that they have, and it works for them, but it's not set up as an SMB product. You cannot just go sign up and it's not
Yeah,
self-serve.
and the reason I ask that is lately I've been learning more than what I had learned over the years about how many systems are out there. And one of the goals for CMMS Radio, when it comes to putting out information, showcasing brands, bringing in experts, on and on like this, even the monologue episodes that I do, is we want to help guide people on where they should and also should not be looking. So that's an important kind
Yeah.
of takeaway if they're thinking, well, what is this company and what is this product? equally important is that even in that case, what they hear on these episodes is going to help them, even if they're using other products.
Yeah.
Because people have asked me a lot more lately, well, what's the best system? Is there? I say, well, the best system is the right system. And we don't know who that is until we know a lot about you, what you're doing, where your problems are, what are the root causes, and can we really get you there? Whereas a lot of people think, well, CMMS is CMMS and you just get one. And that's not always the case. It can work, but it could work even better if you get the right solution. So that was why I asked that question. So, Raj, if people want to get in touch with you and continue a conversation, start a conversation, whatever it might be, what is your preferred method for people to reach out?
Um, but to me personally, they can email me at Raj, R-A-J, at facilio.com, or get in touch with me on LinkedIn. That's email is the best way, I guess. I'm not very active on LinkedIn, but email works best. Yeah, but if they want to get in touch with our team, can just go on our website, fill a form, and we should be in touch.
Excellent. And for everyone out there listening, maybe not watching, that is www.facilio.com. And we'll put some information in the video version for people to, kind of see on screen how to get in touch with you. I really appreciate your time today, Raj. And I look forward to watching this journey continue, not just for you, but for Facilio and your customers. And we always appreciate contributions to CMMS Radio. So thank you for spending the time with us today.
Oh, thanks, Greg. I appreciate what you're doing here. CMMS is a much neglected space, I would say. In terms of for customers, they don't have a lot of influencers and voices that they can rely upon for a good advice, so to speak. Right. So I appreciate really what you're doing here for the space itself, and happy to be here.
Excellent. Again,
All right.
thanks for spending the time.
Thank you so much.
Did you find this episode helpful? Please send us some feedback, suggest a topic, or ask a question, and follow us on your favorite podcasting platform. Reach out to CMMS Radio if you need a co-pilot on your CMMS project, and keep listening to CMMS Radio. Do you have a CMMS story? We'd love to hear it. Visit CMMSradio.com and use the What's on Your Mind link. Thank you for tuning in to CMMS Radio, your resource for all things CMMS, from selection to implementation, to help you make better choices, learn from industry experts, and have a successful CMMS journey.